Alright, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Slowburn Show where I'm kind of dressed up in all black, looking like I'm ready to go rob a place after I get done with this podcast. I don't know if y'all knew, but that's how I keep the bills rolling as an amateur fighter. It doesn't pay a whole lot, so. Anyways, I usually start the podcast with MMA topics, but I don't have a whole bunch today, so I'm going to see if Kobe has a non-MMA one to start off.
So you know what kick is?
Kick, is that the new streaming thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So apparently all the big streamers are going over there.
Okay.
I don't know, I just think it's stupid because there's always cause it's like the owners of this like gambling website. You can't gamble on Twitch or something like
Right,
that.
yeah, you can't.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I just feel like it's stupid. That's why everybody wants to go over there is to go gamble.
Well,
Just upset.
that kind of like it's kind of like the same thing in the MMA space where these like you have this really high promotion like Twitch where all like a bunch of streamers know that platform, but there's also these lower level organizations like Bellator, PFL, and One, which I wouldn't even necessarily consider them lower level. They just aren't in the limelight like the UFC is, but I guess you could say that's the same way with Kick. They're trying to like build like a free agency game with the streamers signing contracts and stuff. So maybe the streamers will be getting more money and not getting banned as much either.
Yeah, I know there's when it first started, people were just watching porn and just having sex on it.
Yeah, on Kick or
On kick.
yeah.
Yeah. It was
Do you remember the
so
Kick, the little messaging app that people used to use in middle
yeah,
school?
I did. What a great
Basically,
day.
it's maybe that's where they got their inspiration from, all the craziness that used to happen
Yeah.
on that app. The only MMA topic I have is that I have a fight officially booked for March 18th in Hartsville, Tennessee, against Jeremiah Pearson. I don't really know what his first name is because I've heard Jeremiah and I've also heard Jeer, which is just Jere, and that's what it says on his Tapology too. So I'm gonna just take it for that. Uh, but that's essentially the only MMA news. I think all the MMA stuff we're going to be talking about a lot of the last weekend's card with Volkanovski and Makhachev. So
Oh
that,
yeah, I forgot that was last week.
yeah,
That feels so long
I
ago.
know, but that's I feel like we'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to that.
Oh
So, let's go ahead and recap last week's Slowburn Showdown. We both didn't do too hot. We both were in the negative after that one, even with and I think it was mostly because of maybe picking too many underdogs by us, and maybe
I think we only picked underdogs.
yeah, the only favorite out of the whole, both me and your picks was Madalena, Jack Della Madalena, and that was a great fight. Well, great fight for Jack at least. But on the week had minus $61.12. So I almost got close to zero, but and the only reason I almost got close is because I picked Madalena as my lock and I risked 500 on him for 638.88, which was only $138 profit, but that jumped me up him getting the win. And but for you, we had you didn't risk as much as me. Like I risked $1,260, but you risked $500, and but the only money that you got back on that one was the draw because if you have a draw like that, you know what I'm saying, it almost voids, yeah, it voids out your bet, so you get the 100 you risked on that one back. So 100 total brings it to minus 400 on that night. And that brought us both. Now we're both in the negative, so it's almost a race to see who's going to be closer to zero by the end of this year. That brought you to minus 320 on the year, and me to minus 229.97. Not too great, but
Nope.
good thing they do a card almost every single weekend. So just like we've been
There's a
having this
chance.
negative streak to start the year, we could have a positive streak to jump us right back
Right.
into.
That's not a good. It's not a good start for the year. That's for
No,
sure.
I think
I know the verdict, that little league.
yeah,
I haven't gotten a single fight right in the entire thing. Oh boy.
dude. But Joe, the thing about our fantasy league, a lot of us are kind of stuck around the same range at the bottom. So if anyone gets a dub tonight that's around those bottom three, you could shoot up to third or
Oh my gosh,
second.
probably do that.
Yeah.
Gotcha, dude.
Yeah. But do you want? We can go through the card real quick too. The main card. Alonzo Minifield versus Jim Recruit was an absolute banger, and both guys were. Did you watch the main card?
I've watched the fights after that.
Okay. Uh, Minifield and Crute was an absolute banger. Both guys almost got finished multiple times, and I had my money on Minifield, so I kept like hoping that he was gonna come through with like a knockout or something. But Jimmy Crute stood in there and weathered the storm and was ended up getting like someone got a foul, but I can't remember who did what. I think it was grabbing the fence by Alonzo Minifield, and that's what made the draw happen because there was a 10-8 round for somebody or 9-9. But after that, we had the Australian, which I was really hoping. I said this was the only reason that Tafa was going to win. If he doesn't knock him out in the first, that Porter was probably going to take the decision. And I even said out loud on the last pod, and Porter tends to get touched a lot in the first round. So I probably should have just listened to my own words and went to the other side. But we both had Porter in that one, and it was kind of not too fun to start the two first fights on the main card basically L's. I mean, you can't really consider the Minifield one a dub. What did you think about that knockout?
I mean, I figured, if it was gonna be a knockout, it was gonna be from that guy. What is he, Samoan or
Yeah, they're Australian, but there's a bunch of like Ty Tuivasa. He's from Australian too. There's a bunch of Samoan motherfuckers out there, big boys. I wonder what part. I think it's West Sydney that Ty's from, so maybe on the west side of Australia or something. There's a bunch of Samoan, like we have Hawaii, where there's a bunch of Polynesian dudes over there. The next one was Kangaroo Jack versus Randy Brown. That one was an absolute banger until Jack decided to lay a freaking. It was either a left hook or a right hook on him, and it's so hard to tell how much power somebody has when they have like a knockout like that, because it almost seems like he barely clipped him. So I couldn't tell if it was like placement or power that he knocked him out with. But when he made Randy Brown start stumbling, he was almost gone from that point. He was falling all over the place. Yeah, he jumped right on him and got the finish quickly. And I think that's 3 first-round finishes in a row for Madalena. So good for him. And then we have Josh Emmett and Yair Rodriguez, which I was just kind of sad watching that one because now it looks like Josh Emmett's on the last stint of his career. Yeah, he looked old, almost like overtrained. Maybe like because in those embedded videos, they look like he was punching way harder in those videos than he was doing in the fight. Like it seemed like maybe he was too tense for the moment, being his first championship fight. But he just, to me,
I mean, Yair, he looked good too.
yeah, he did. And and Josh Emmett had his moments. I'm not saying it was a completely terrible performance, but there was moments where I could see Josh just looking old, just looking older. But Yair, obviously, that's usually how his fights usually go. They're just crazy wars, and until someone either drops or time runs out. That makes sense, and that's exactly what happened. Yair got that great knockout. He was binking him with some elbows in the clinch, and I don't know if you saw those. When he would get those elbows off, he was causing a lot of damage. And then the most controversial fight of the night. How did you score that fight before we even talk about this main event?
I don't know. I would have. That's so hard. I feel like Islam, he did enough to win.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like how he like Izzy he gets the decision win. I feel like he did enough to get the win, but I still, I don't really know. I would have given it to Volk still.
My opinion after watching it probably like 4 or 5 times now, it depends on what criteria you judge it off of, because, and I had this conversation literally last night with a teammate at the gym. If Islam won that fight off that whatever criteria we were basing it off of, because these judges will literally come out and say that they judge fights based on their own criteria. So there's no official fucking rule system at this point. If Islam won that fight on that criteria that night, then Peter Yan should have beat Sean O'Malley on that night, if that makes sense. Like, if we're basing it off control time, and no matter if you land punches or not, and I'm not saying Islam didn't land any punches when they were on the ground. He did land some, but they were far and few in between, and didn't really cause too much damage on Volkanovski's face. And that's what essentially we're supposed to be looking for, is damage. I think if you base it off the criteria that we're talking about, where if you get a lot of control time like Islam did, then he won. But if we're basing it off damage like I think we're supposed to, but I don't know at this point. I have no clue what the fuck I'm watching. Then Volkanovski would have won.
I feel like the way I would judge it is who looks better. I feel like someone's just gonna wrestle you the whole time, but somebody's like wrestling and hitting. I feel like that's winning the fight.
Yeah.
I just feel like it's just a whole look thing, because like you could see someone like you see all those like the bathroom fights from like high schools and stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody gets hit in their nosebleeds.
Right.
But like you see him piecing it up. It's like,
right.
Yeah, his nose is bleeding, but he won the fight.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's how kind of Pride was scored. I don't know if you've ever watched a Pride fight, but they based it off the entirety of the fight. If someone was on top, like Volkanovski was at the end and landing bombs at the very end of the fight, then they were going to get the decision no matter what the rest of the fight looked like. They based the fight on like the peak of it, if that makes sense. Like the climax, whoever won that was who won the fight. And I like that rule. And if we go off that rule set, Volkanovski wins 10 out of 10 times on a judge's scorecards. But I think we need to have a more clear understanding of the rules. Like they need to do like a UFC seminar to the public, not just to these few individuals, the judges, because it's so unclear to us as the fans. Like, I'm a hardcore UFC fan, and I have no clue what the fuck I'm watching at this point. So, that's my thoughts on that.
I don't know. I feel bad for Volk, and then I feel for Islam. Like I like both of them. Like I feel like there will be good champions.
Yeah.
Whatever the division is.
I would love to see them run it back immediately. And I think that's what they're going to do, and I hope that's what they do. And the only thing that yeah, the only issue with that is that the 145 division might get held up with, well, not necessarily held up, because they could defend that interim title. That's happened before in history. I forget who it was. Like, someone defended the interim title when there was a current champion still. So, hopefully that's what they do. Hopefully Yair fights, I don't know, Max Holloway for the second time, because that was a great fight the first time it went. But then if Max wins, then you have Max versus Volk 4, and Max lost the first 3. Yeah, no one wants to see that. We saw how Figgy and Brandon 4 win, and that ended very anticlimactic. So we can just go ahead and move on to the Slowburn Showdown for this week. Erin Blanchfield versus Jessica Andrade, which honestly what?
Is Erin Blanchfield the one who fought Molly McCann?
Mm-hmm. And she Kimora'd her.
Yeah.
This is that main event is the only fight I'm really excited for in this card. All the other fights they could honestly do a main event, or they could do a card on ESPN where they did a pre-show for 2 hours and then just show this main event, and I would like tune in and watch the whole thing, because that's honestly all I'm excited for. All the rest of the fights could be dismissed. I really don't care. We'll start with Jim Miller versus Alexander Hernandez, and a little stipulation on this one. Somebody else was supposed to fight Jim Miller, and Alexander Hernandez is stepping in on 1 week notice and is the minus 240 favorite against Jim Miller, who has the most wins in the UFC, and most wins and most fights in the UFC ever.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Alexander on that one. I was looking at it. Jim Miller, he's 39, and then I saw a picture of Alexander. He just looks too dog. He looks mean. Like the age is gonna catch up for Jim.
When you're saying he looks mean, are you saying he looks swole? Like big? He the thing about that like I agree with you. I think he has a way better physique build than Jim Miller, and Jim Miller is kind of on the very end of his career, not even close to the end. It's on the very end of his career, and the issue with Alexander Hernandez being that super cut guy is that this fight's on 1 week notice, so I don't know how much time he necessarily prepared for the weight cut that he had to do yesterday morning. And but that's the reason I'm gonna pick the guy that has the most wins in UFC and the most fights in UFC. I think that's just a great stat, and he's not hit 40 yet. I'm not even necessarily trying to say that's a good stat because he's 39, but he's not 40 yet. So he's a 30-year-old. He's in his 30s. But yeah, I'll pick Jim Miller for. I'll risk 100 for 175, and you'll risk 240 for $100 profit. So we'll move to William Knight and Marcin Prachin. I don't even know. Prachnio. Is that how would you say it?
Prachnio.
That sounded better than what I said, so we'll go with Prachnio.
Yeah.
Poland.
From Poland, so
yeah. The only reason I'm picking the Polish guy is because I feel like William Knight has an issue with people who are like 5 inches taller than him, and not saying that he can't fight somebody like that, but I think in his last 2 losses were the guys that were. Well, no, I lied. He just lost to Devin Clark, and he was 6 foot. I was about to say that guys were 6'3" and taller, but he's lost to 2 dudes in the UFC that were 6'3" and 6'4", and then he just lost to Devin Clark at heavyweight, which, honestly, losing to Devin Clark, who's definitely a light heavyweight at that weight class heavyweight, kind of says something about your technical skills, because he had like a 40-pound advantage on weigh-in day, and then when they went in, Devin Clark did what he does, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'll pick Marcin Prachnio at the plus 105 mark and risk 100 for $105 profit. What do you got?
We'll go with the little man, the nightmare.
Hey, is that his name?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
The nightmare.
That's pretty hard.
I feel like he's a small, light, heavyweight.
Yeah, he's super cut. He looks super lean on weigh-in day, like super lean and bulked all at the same time. I'm not even saying that the weight cut will be an issue for William Knight, but when he weighed in for heavyweight his last time out, he was 253. And for light heavyweight you have to weigh in at 206. So he did have to cut like 50 pounds to make that, but he had all the weight to lose at that point. He's 5'10" and fighting at heavyweight, that's almost like a DC type bill, if you know what I'm saying. So they have the weight to make that light heavyweight mark. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Knight come out with a win on this either. He has a lot of power in his hands. He's knocked out heavyweights before, I'm sure, so a light heavyweight might not be too much of a problem. Josh Parisan, yeah, we'll move on to the next one. Charles Parisan versus Jamal Pogues. Who you got?
I got Josh
Parisan. I said Parisan. That's probably not right. See, this is what I'm talking.
I don't know. I look at
Pogues.
I don't know. I just feel like you got it.
Yeah.
And Josh, whatever his name is, has a 60-pound weight advantage.
Is that what it says?
It says 265 weight and then 205. So I mean that could be not updated. But
I think they probably do that. Here, let me see before we move on, because they do that sometimes because they'll show their last fight weigh in. Let me see if it's updated on. Are you looking on ESPN's website or what?
And then James Pogue is 249.
Yeah. So that's the. Did you say 205 at first?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Just on the one on Google.
Yeah, but it's still a weight advantage for sure. He's probably coming up from light heavyweight and trying to be a heavyweight. And I heard from one of the great heavyweights, Curtis Blades, if you've heard the name. He said just because you weigh 250 260 doesn't mean you're a heavyweight. And so I think that's what we're going to see as well. I'm going to go with you on the Josh Parisan. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. And we'll both risk $100 for $200 profit. And I'm not going to lie to you, on that fight, I haven't seen either of those dudes fight. I didn't go back and watch any of their fights, but I did look at the stats, and when I look at the stats, the reach advantage and the weight sticks out a lot, and the height. So I'm going to take all those advantages at a plus money mark for sure as a bettor. And maybe that'll work out better than me actually studying the fights, because when I study them, it seems like that's not working. So, Zach, moving on to the co-main event, Zach Pauga versus Jordan Wright. Zach Pauga made it to the Ultimate Fighter final as a heavyweight and got knocked out by Kamaru Usman's brother. And I honestly think a lot of it came to just size and power. Like, I don't think Zach Pauga is a heavyweight. I think he got the opportunity to get on the Ultimate Fighter as a heavyweight and took it and did what he could with it. And he knocked out a dude in the semifinals. And he's now he's fighting at light heavyweight in this co-main event. But like I said, I think the reason he lost against Usman's brother, I don't think it was a matter of skill. I think it was just a matter of size and power. I think if they're the same size, Pauga wins. And that would make him an undefeated fighter as well. So he's something and one because of Usman. And Jordan Wright is on a 3-fight losing streak, being finished all 3 times, I'm pretty sure. If it's not 3, it's 2. Either way, he's been finished like 4 times in his last 5 fights. And when I see somebody getting constantly finished, either you're not motivated or you're just not up to the skill level of where you're at. So we're going to find out how good Zach Pauga is and if Jordan Wright still belongs in the UFC. But I'm going to pick that he doesn't belong and that Zach Pauga is going to be his last fight in the UFC. And I'll risk the 305 for 100.
Yeah, I was going to go with, I would say Pauga. I would go with Zach here. He doesn't have as many fights, but like you said, fights he did have, he looked good, and he made it to the championship. So I feel like the age and then just the amount of fights he has is gonna be good for him because he's gonna be hungry for that win. And he wants to keep on going, and he's got Jordan Wright, so you got a guy on the downhill, you got a guy who just wants to go up.
Right. So yeah, you're gonna go with. I think it's Pauga. I think I'm saying that one. I'm saying that one right. But this guy is a. Yeah, he is definitely a Samoan, big Samoan that should have been fighting at light heavyweight and not at heavyweight. But he can do heavyweight. It's just you're gonna get those guys that are cutting down to the 265 mark, like Usman's brother and like Francis Ngannou and Derek Lewis, and those guys are just going to be a little bit too much at this level. So we'll both take Zach Pauga at minus 305 versus 305 for $100 profit. And then moving on to the main event, which is honestly, like I said earlier, the only one I'm really excited for, Jessica Andrade versus Erin Blanchfield. Who do you got first?
I would go for Andrade. Just because of the last fight I saw with Jessica, I just feel like
with Lauren Murphy.
Yeah, I just feel like she's got it. She's more experienced.
Definitely.
Blanchfield, she's on the up, so she needs to be leveled down a little bit. So I feel like this is the fight where she gets leveled.
I definitely agree. It's a giant test for Erin Blanchfield. She's like 23 or 24, fighting somebody that's been in the game for quite a minute. Jessica Andrade really only has losses to elite competitors. Let me just list some of these people she lost to. One of them, her last loss was Valentina Shevchenko, and that was 3-4 fights ago. Rose Namajunas, she lost to in 2020. Zhang Weili, all names we know. Joanna Jędrzejczyk, all names we know. Raquel Pennington. Marion Renault, you might not know who that one is. And Jennifer Maia. And there's a couple more others on there that hardcores would know, but just of those are all big names that she loses to. And along with that, she has 24 wins on her pro record, so she's definitely is the more experienced fighter. And this is a giant test for Erin Blanchfield. But I think Erin Blanchfield's strongest skill set is grappling, and I think that's Andrade's weakest aspect. I think Andrade, she does really good against competitors that like to try and be on the back foot, and Andrade will keep the pressure and throw punches and bunches, and that's how she really beat Lauren Murphy. But I think if she gets a little bit too close, and I think that's what Andrade tends to do, she'll throw almost one too many punches, and they can end up in clinch positions, and that's how Valentina Shevchenko took advantage of her. And I think if they get into these clinch positions, Erin Blanchfield's going to be able to get a takedown and potentially sub her. But that's who I got. Erin Blanchfield. I'll risk $100 for an even 100 because she's at plus 100, and you'll take Jessica Andrade at minus 120, risk $120 for $100. So I'll try and run through these Swink slips. I should have recapped the ones from last week when we did the Slowburn Showdown recap, but I'll run through it real quick. We ended up going even on the night because I said if we hit 2 of the 3, we would have went positive, but Alonzo Manifield and Jimmy Crew kind of fucked that up for me being a draw. So we got the money back on Alonzo Manifield on the underdog of the night, and so we risked $100 on that. We got our 100 back on that. We had Volkanovski by KO/TKO or decision. So if the judges would have got it, in my opinion, correct, we would have went definitely positive on the night at plus 340. So we lose the 100 on that. And then we had Jack Della Maddalena at minus 360 of our lock of the night. And so we risked $360 to get $100 profit on that. So all those bets ended up making us just even on the night. So $0 won, $0 lost, which is not too bad considering where we're at almost minus 6 units on the year. And but my swing slips for this card, I have 3 as well. And if either of the first 2 hit, will be, well, no, let me not lie here. Let me just get into them. Underdog of the night, we have Jim Miller at plus 175. And I just, the reason I'm picking that line is, one, Jim Miller, he's done this time and time again, and he's been having this training camp probably scheduled. It was probably scheduled, and he got a decent notice for this, so he's been hopefully well trained for this fight. Alex Hernandez has only had 1 week notice, hasn't been doing too well of late, but he does need a win here, and that can add to motivation to anybody when you absolutely need a win in the UFC. You'll go out if someone knocks you out, but there's going to be no quit in you. And I don't see Alexander Hernandez quitting in this fight, but I don't see him being able to outdo the experienced veteran. So I'll take Jim Miller, a guy with the most wins and the most fights in the UFC, at plus 175, risk 100 for $175. Moving on to the second one is my prop of the night, and I have Pauga by KO/TKO. And I really don't like the line on this one. I wish I would have got this at at least a little plus money, but it's at minus 165, so that means we'll risk $165 for $100 profit. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think Pauga is going to be the person to put Jordan Wright out of the UFC, and he's going to do it in fantastic fashion at light heavyweight, moving down to, I think, his correct weight class. I don't think he is a heavyweight. And my last one, my Slowburn slick pick of the night, this one's kind of, because we kind of put this podcast together kind of quick, and we kind of are going through these picks quick, I wanted to pick a quick single game parlay because I kind of just threw these picks together quickly, to be honest. So I have Blanchfield to win by sub and also have the most takedowns. And I got this at a really decent line. If you go on DraftKings and you go and click on UFC and you go to the popular section, you'll find these quick single game parlays, and it was like the second one. And you'll get her at plus 425 on this one. So she has to win by sub and also have the most takedowns. And I think if she's going to win, that's how she's going to win. So I'll take it at that huge plus number at 425. Risk $100 for 425. Well, that pretty much is all I have for the Swink Slips and the Slowburn Showdown. Do you have any non-MMA extra stuff? I figured you wanted. Not really much has happened in the space besides Chinese balloons. Chinese balloons and Islam Makhachev.
And AI presidents playing Valorant. Have you seen those videos?
No.
So it's like I've been seeing them on TikTok and Twitter, where it just be like these guys. So apparently there's like an AI technology now that can mimic voices. They have like Joe Biden, Obama, and Trump playing Valorant. So that's like
Oh, now I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Those videos. And I think they're kind of funny, but that's kind of scary.
Yeah, it definitely. I saw one with Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and Jordan Peterson. They were all playing Minecraft together. Dude, yeah, and the way they sounded just like those people. I've also seen AI is getting a little crazy on these chatbots. The Bing chatbot is threatening people, and it said, man, I wish I knew exactly what it asked. Maybe it was like, "Am I stupid?" or something. Like it asked Bing if it was stupid, and the chatbot was like, "Yeah, you're stupid. I'm way superior than you." And blah 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 blah. Like chatbots are gonna be the future. Is what the chatbot was fucking saying, man. Fuck that, dude. I'm not trying to be controlled by AI.
Just trying to knock people out.
Yeah, dude. That's one thing I worry about with Elon Musk's little Neuralink thing. Like, what if he puts a Neuralink in somebody and then they get into the UFC and they fucking know everything? They know how to. They're like super physically advanced. They know how to do weight cuts without draining their body to where they can get knocked out. Like, because they have all the source in their head, they have the internet in their fucking brain. That's what I have to worry about in fighting to do like that at this point. Because I'm not getting that link in my head. Hell no. Well, hopefully, next week's going to be kind of a two-part episode. We're going to have 3 high school wrestlers on that all made it to state from. 2 of them are from McGavick High School, Xavier and Haley Cox, brother and sister, and then one of them is Cameron Isabel, and he's from Wilson Central. He used to wrestle at McGavick, but he transferred to Wilson Central High School, and they all qualify for state. Xavier and Cameron won their division, and Haley got second. He had to get top 4 to qualify for state, so that's super awesome they did that. So I will be there on the Friday and Saturday they compete as well. I'm going to go watch them and hopefully win their first state title. I've never seen a person of mine besides Nick Boykin, if anybody knows who that is. I've watched him win 3 state titles. So besides that, I haven't watched anybody else of a teammate of mine win a state title, and that would be awesome to do. So I'll do an interview with them first, and then me and Kobe will finish the show out doing the Slowburn Showdown and Swink Slips. So I will see y'all later. Peace.